On her wedding day, everything was supposed to be perfect. But just before the vows, the groom disappeared, and no one knew why. A missing groom, a bride in tears, and a dark secret hidden behind the wedding day. What really happened that morning, and what truth could destroy everything? This is the story of love, betrayal, and a shocking secret uncovered too late. Lina had been the kind of girl who always pictured her wedding day down to the smallest detail. Not in a childish, fairy tale way, but in a deeply hopeful way, like someone who believes love could anchor her life. Growing up in a small town, she often passed the church where her parents once stood, and she whispered to herself that one day, she would walk through those same doors. To her, that church wasn't just a building. It carried history, promises, and dreams she thought were finally coming true. And now, with Daniel waiting, the life she had imagined felt close enough to touch. The church filled quickly that morning. Guests arrived dressed in soft pastels and navy suits, carrying smiles and wrapped boxes tied with ribbons. The smell of fresh flowers floated through the air, mixing with the faint scent of polished wood and candles lit in the aisles. People greeted one another with hugs, laughter echoing softly against the high ceilings. It wasn't just another wedding, it was a gathering of hope, a reminder that love could still bring people together. Everyone leaned into the moment, ready to witness what they believed would be the happiest day of Lina's life. Her friends admired her endlessly. They often said she had a kind of beauty that wasn't just in her face but in the way she cared about people. Her patience, her ability to listen, her gentle laughter, it was all part of why Daniel had fallen in love with her. They remembered how she had stayed by his side through difficult times, offering him the kind of support that wasn't always easy to give. Now, watching her prepare for the ceremony, they whispered about how she deserved every ounce of joy that day was supposed to hold. In the dressing room, Lina adjusted her veil, her hands trembling more from excitement than fear. The mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized, elegant, glowing, almost unreal. The lace of her gown seemed to shimmer under the light, and the bouquet of white roses rested gently in her hands. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the sound of the organ rehearsing in the background carry her. Everything had fallen into place exactly as she dreamed. It felt like the world was aligning itself just for her. Outside, Daniel greeted guests with the charm that had always drawn people in. He smiled, shook hands, and made polite conversation with family members who had traveled far to see him marry the woman he claimed was the love of his life. On the surface, everything looked perfect. His suit was tailored, his hair neatly styled, and his voice steady as he welcomed each person. Yet behind his smile, something small flickered, something only those who watched closely might notice. A heaviness in his gaze, a pause too long when someone mentioned forever. The choir began to warm up, their voices layering over the hum of chatter in the church. The sound filled the space with warmth, lifting spirits even higher. Children shuffled in their seats, playing with petals that had fallen from the decorations. Grandparents wiped their eyes, already emotional at the sight of young love stepping into a lifelong promise. There was a glow in the air that morning, the kind of atmosphere people spoke about for years after a wedding. For Lina's family, it was proof that dreams really could come true. Guests leaned toward one another, whispering with excitement. They spoke about how perfect the couple seemed, how Lina and Daniel appeared to be made for each other. Some even shared stories of the first time they saw them together, Daniel holding Lina's hand as if he couldn't let go, Lina looking at him like no one else existed. To those watching, the couple was proof that true love could survive and even thrive in a world often filled with heartbreak. But as people shared their joy, not a single one could imagine what was about to unfold. Lina's father paced nervously in the hallway, holding her arm gently when he peeked in to check on her. His pride was unmistakable, his eyes wet with emotion as he prepared to walk her down the aisle. To him, this day was not just about giving his daughter away, it was about watching her step into a future she had built with her own heart. He whispered blessings under his breath, convinced that Daniel was the man who would protect and cherish her. That belief, though, was about to be shaken in ways he couldn't predict. And so, with the church filled, the flowers arranged, and the guests waiting, it seemed the perfect beginning. Everything looked as though it had been written in the stars, untouched by doubt or misfortune. Yet sometimes, the most beautiful mornings hide the darkest storms. And while everyone leaned into the glow of celebration, something in Daniel's eyes didn't quite match the joy painted across his smile. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Daniel had begun to change in ways that made Lina uneasy. He smiled as usual, but there were moments when his eyes seemed distant, clouded with thoughts he wouldn't share. Late at night, she would catch him scrolling through his phone, quickly tucking it away whenever she looked. Small things she once ignored now felt heavy, like the way he hesitated before answering her questions or sighed quietly when no one was watching. Lina told herself it was just wedding stress, the nerves every groom experienced, but a knot in her stomach whispered that something more lingered beneath the surface. Lina remembered the nights when Daniel stayed up on the couch, pretending to read while glancing at messages he didn't want her to see. Sometimes she tried to approach him casually, asking about his day, but he would give vague answers, nod, or change the subject. The warmth they had shared for years now felt punctuated by silence and small tensions. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was carrying a secret, something too heavy to share, and it made her heart tighten in ways she hadn't anticipated. The thought gnawed at her during quiet moments alone. Even his friends noticed. When he met them for coffee or casual dinners, Daniel seemed distracted, checking his phone too often, laughing without conviction. They asked questions behind his back, glancing at Lina with concern. She tried not to overthink it, telling herself people talked too much, that everyone assumed stress or cold feet. Still, her intuition screamed louder than their reassurances. Deep inside, she sensed a hidden layer to his behavior, a tension that didn't fit with the joyful narrative they had painted for their families. One evening, Lina overheard a conversation he had on the phone. She wasn't trying to listen, but the sharpness in his voice caught her attention. A name she didn't recognize was mentioned, along with hushed words that carried urgency and fear. Daniel abruptly ended the call when he realized she was near, claiming it was work, something he had to handle. Lina forced a smile, pretending to brush off the moment, yet the words lingered in her mind, repeating over and over. That single encounter planted a seed of doubt she couldn't shake. The tension grew with every passing day. Daniel's moments of distance were interspersed with fleeting expressions of warmth that confused Lina even more. She wondered if she was imagining things, but her instincts rarely failed her. Every unexplained glance, every hidden message, every sigh late at night stacked on top of one another like bricks in a wall she couldn't tear down. She wanted to trust him fully, but the invisible weight between them grew heavier with every interaction. Lina began to notice subtle changes in their routines. Daniel would arrive late from work without explanation, avoid certain friends, or cancel plans at the last minute. Each act alone seemed insignificant, but combined, they created a pattern that made her stomach churn. She started keeping mental notes, trying to piece together the puzzle of his behavior. The anticipation of discovering the truth mingled with anxiety, making her feel both drawn to him and wary of the man she had pledged her heart to. Something was unfolding that neither of them could yet name. Her friends tried to reassure her. They said that nerves before a wedding could make anyone behave strangely, that Daniel loved her and the stress would pass. But Lina couldn't stop analyzing every interaction, every word, every fleeting expression. She felt torn between trusting the man she loved and listening to the unease that had settled quietly in her mind. Each day, she became more aware of the cracks forming in what had seemed a perfect relationship. One late night, the sound of her phone ringing startled Lina. Daniel snatched it from the counter, his hand tight, his eyes darting nervously. He whispered that it was just a work call, dismissing her questions, but the sharpness of his tone spoke volumes. That evening, she realized the truth she had been avoiding. Something was hidden from her, something that would change the way she saw her life, her love, and the wedding she had spent months imagining. The peaceful anticipation she once felt had begun to crumble. As the wedding day approached, Lina couldn't stop thinking about the secrets Daniel might be keeping. She tried to focus on the flowers, the dress, the music, but her mind kept returning to that strange phone call and the unexplained tension in his eyes. Each passing moment made her wonder what awaited her on the day she had always dreamed of, and whether the man she trusted most could truly be the one standing beside her. Something whispered that nothing was as perfect as it seemed, and the unknown loomed over her heart. The morning sun spilled softly through the lace curtains, painting Lina's room with a gentle golden light. She awoke with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation, her heart fluttering as she ran her fingers over the delicate fabric of her wedding dress. Everything around her seemed to glow, the flowers arranged meticulously on the vanity, the soft scent of roses, and the sunlight catching the crystal in her jewelry. Today was the day she had imagined for years, a day meant to be filled with love, laughter, and memories that would last a lifetime. Guests began arriving quietly outside, their voices and laughter drifting up through the windows. Friends hugged each other, sharing quick glimpses of the ceremony to come, while family members commented on the careful decorations and the perfect weather. Lina's excitement built as she thought about walking down the aisle, hearing the music, and seeing Daniel waiting for her with that familiar smile. The world outside her room seemed full of promise, yet a small unease lingered at the edges of her joy. She held her bouquet tightly, feeling the weight of the flowers as if it could anchor her nerves. Every petal seemed to carry a memory of her life with Daniel, the first date, their laughter, the quiet nights they spent talking about dreams. In that moment, she wanted to savor it all, knowing this day would change everything. She smoothed the folds of her gown, taking deep breaths, trying to focus on the beauty around her and the people who had gathered to witness their love. Meanwhile, the organist tuned the piano in the church, the first notes of music floating faintly through the morning air. Guests began taking their seats, chatting softly, their eyes flicking toward the doors where Daniel was supposed to appear. The anticipation hummed like electricity. Children shuffled in the pews, playing quietly, while older family members whispered in excitement. The air felt alive, full of expectation and subtle tension, as if the entire world were holding its breath for the moment when Lina would finally walk forward. Outside the church, Daniel had arrived just moments before, shaking hands and offering smiles that seemed practiced. He greeted friends and family with charm and politeness, but there was a stiffness in his posture, a hesitation in his movements. His eyes scanned the room frequently, as if searching for something, or perhaps avoiding something. On the surface, he looked composed, but those paying close attention might have noticed a flicker of uncertainty that hinted at the tension simmering beneath the day's celebration. Back in her room, Lina adjusted her veil for the final time, taking in a deep breath that mingled excitement with an almost imperceptible tremor of doubt. The hours that should have felt like a calm, joyful preparation now stretched longer, each minute building anticipation and a strange anxiety. She smiled at herself in the mirror, willing the fear to vanish, yet a part of her couldn't help noticing how quiet the halls were, how Daniel's presence seemed to be delayed just enough to unsettle her carefully balanced emotions. The first guests began to glance at the doors, checking the time subtly as soft whispers spread through the rows. The music continued, growing louder as the ceremony approached, but Daniel's absence began to ripple across the crowd like an unseen current. Lina's heart raced, a mixture of excitement and worry intertwining in a way she couldn't fully untangle. Each passing moment felt heavier, as if the perfect morning was slowly giving way to something unknown, something she couldn't yet name. Her bridesmaids tried to calm her with gentle smiles and reassurances, yet even their words couldn't fully erase the subtle tension that was now pressing against the edges of the room. Lina's mind wandered between memories of joyful days with Daniel and the gnawing worry that something was off. The vivid colors of her dress, the shimmering flowers, and the soft music seemed to form a fragile bubble, holding her hopes and fears together, ready to burst at any second. Hours passed, and the whispers grew louder. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, some checking the doors again and again. Lina gripped her bouquet so tightly her fingers ached, each second stretching longer than the last. The anticipation, once sweet and hopeful, began to twist into unease. And then, the moment arrived when a pale-faced friend rushed in, breathless, whispering words that would shatter the calm. "The groom is missing." At first, Lina couldn't believe what she had just heard. The words echoed in her mind like a cruel joke. The groom is missing. Her heart skipped a beat, and she clutched her bouquet as if it could anchor her to reality. The laughter and excitement that had filled the morning vanished, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed down on the church. Guests exchanged anxious glances, whispers spiraling into murmurs as the news traveled from pew to pew. The bright day suddenly felt cold, the sun outside unable to reach the warmth she had imagined for this moment. She stepped forward, her shoes clicking against the polished floor, her eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of Daniel. Each familiar face seemed to blur as panic grew in her chest. Friends and family tried to offer comfort, but their words barely reached her. Her mind raced, cycling through impossible scenarios, a sudden accident, a prank gone wrong, or something she couldn't even imagine. Every possibility seemed darker than the last, yet she clung to hope, desperate for any explanation that would make sense. Her makeup began to smudge as tears fell, and the bouquet in her hands shook with the intensity of her emotions. The warmth she had felt in her dreams of this day dissolved into a mix of fear, betrayal, and humiliation. She had trusted Daniel with her heart, her future, and her most intimate dreams, only to face a moment that felt like every fear she had ever held. The church, once a sanctuary of beauty and celebration, now reflected her inner turmoil, echoing the quiet despair building inside her. Guests murmured anxiously, some offering tentative suggestions, others simply watching the scene unfold. The air was thick with tension, as if everyone inside sensed the fragility of this day. Lina's family whispered urgently among themselves, trying to piece together what could have happened. Her father's hand trembled as he reached for her arm, his voice heavy with concern. Even with their support, the weight of Daniel's absence pressed on her shoulders like a physical force, each heartbeat a reminder of the betrayal she couldn't yet explain. A friend rushed to the back of the church, returning moments later with news that only deepened the confusion. Daniel's car had been found parked near the church, but the driver's seat was empty, and the doors were locked from the inside. Panic mingled with disbelief as everyone processed the implications. How could a man who had promised to stand by her side disappear so completely? The answers weren't there, only questions that twisted through her mind, leaving a bitter taste of helplessness. Lina's thoughts flickered to the small hints she had noticed in recent weeks, moments of distance, late-night messages, unexplained sighs. At the time, she had dismissed them, telling herself it was just nerves or wedding stress. Now, each memory replayed with painful clarity, forming a pattern that seemed impossible to ignore. She realized that perhaps she had seen the signs, but had been too hopeful, too in love, to truly understand what was coming. The weight of that realization pressed down on her, mixing sorrow with the sting of betrayal. The guests grew restless as the minutes dragged by. Whispers spread like wildfire, speculations fueling the anxiety in the room. Some suggested he had run off with another woman, others guessed at accidents or last-minute cold feet. Every theory seemed both plausible and devastating. Lina felt a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion, each emotion layering on top of the other in a swirl she couldn't untangle. Her carefully planned day, the culmination of years of dreaming, was slipping through her fingers in an instant. Despite the shock, a part of Lina refused to give up completely. Somewhere deep inside, she held on to the hope that this was a mistake, a misunderstanding that would soon be resolved. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet, her knuckles white, as if gripping it could hold reality together. She searched the crowd, scanning faces, willing Daniel to appear, willing this nightmare to end. Yet the tension only thickened, and the silence of his absence spoke louder than any words could. Finally, a friend pulled aside the bridal party to investigate further, leaving Lina standing alone at the front of the church. Tears streamed down her face, but her gaze remained forward, seeking answers that hadn't come. The combination of public scrutiny and private devastation was overwhelming. In that moment, every bride's worst fear had become her reality. And while the church was still filled with friends and family, it felt smaller, more confining, as the mystery of Daniel's disappearance loomed over every heart present. The discovery of Daniel's empty car left everyone stunned. The doors were locked, the keys gone, and no note inside to explain his sudden disappearance. Lina's heart sank further as she tried to make sense of it. Every logical thought collided with a growing panic, and the questions became louder than the music that had once filled the church. Guests began murmuring among themselves, the excitement of the morning replaced with confusion and unease. The perfect day was slipping through her fingers, and nothing seemed to provide even a hint of explanation. Family members argued quietly but heatedly, each offering theories in hushed tones. Some suggested Daniel had a last-minute cold feet moment, while others whispered of possible accidents or unforeseen emergencies. Lina listened to the speculation, feeling an odd mix of disbelief and frustration. None of the explanations fit what she knew about Daniel. He had never been the type to run from commitment or confrontation. The disconnect between his character and the reality of his absence only deepened the sense of mystery surrounding the morning. Her thoughts wandered back to the small, strange things she had noticed over the past weeks. The late-night phone calls he had hidden, the sudden sighs, the moments of avoidance, each memory returned to her with sharper clarity. A nagging feeling grew inside her that there was something she hadn't understood, something that had been deliberately kept from her. The unease that had been quietly building in the shadows of their relationship now demanded her attention. It was impossible to ignore, and it felt heavier than any bouquet or veil could ever be. As she tried to piece together the events, a name surfaced in her memory, one she hadn't recognized at the time. Daniel had mentioned it in a tense, hushed conversation, almost as if speaking it aloud was dangerous. At the time, she dismissed it, thinking it was unimportant, but now it echoed in her mind, taunting her with its unfamiliarity. Her gut told her that this name was connected to the disappearance, but she couldn't yet understand how. The uncertainty gnawed at her, each passing second intensifying the mystery she was trapped in. Guests grew increasingly restless, their curiosity mixed with anxiety. Eyes scanned the church for any sign of Daniel, and whispers spread faster than any official announcement could contain. Every theory seemed plausible, and each theory added to the tension. The perfect celebration of love had transformed into a puzzle no one could solve. Lina's emotions mirrored the chaos around her, a blend of fear, sorrow, and the desperate hope that everything would somehow make sense before it was too late. A friend who had arrived early that morning approached Lina cautiously, trying to offer support without making things worse. But even their presence couldn't calm the storm inside her. She realized that support alone couldn't provide the answers she needed. Every explanation she sought seemed to dissolve into more questions, and every attempt to grasp control over the situation only revealed the fragility of her certainty. She felt caught between hope and despair, each battling for dominance in her mind and heart. Her own thoughts became her most relentless companions. She replayed every recent interaction with Daniel, analyzing the pauses, the subtle expressions, the moments of hesitation. Nothing had seemed unusual at the time, yet now each memory carried weight she hadn't noticed before. The pattern was there, hidden in plain sight, and her mind raced to connect the dots. She felt like she was staring at a map without knowing which path led to the truth. The morning that had promised joy now seemed to hold secrets far heavier than anyone could have imagined. Lina's anxiety intensified as she considered the possible explanations. Was he hurt? Had something happened that no one knew about? Or was there a choice he had made, one that left her completely in the dark? Each scenario felt plausible and terrifying, deepening the storm in her chest. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the decorum of the ceremony and the presence of her family kept her frozen. The uncertainty was suffocating, and every tick of the clock made it worse. In the middle of the confusion, one detail returned to Lina's mind, the strange conversation she had overheard days ago. The name mentioned back then seemed to hum with significance now. She couldn't yet place its relevance, but a knot of dread formed in her stomach. Something was about to surface, something that would shift the understanding of Daniel's disappearance completely. The perfect morning had already turned into a mystery, and Lina was standing at the center of a storm she couldn't yet predict. The whispers began softly, almost like a breeze, but they quickly grew into a chorus of speculation. Guests leaned closer to one another, their voices low yet urgent, trying to make sense of Daniel's sudden disappearance. Some suggested he had run off with another woman, imagining betrayal in every shadow. Others whispered of deaths, accidents, or hidden scandals that no one had known about. Each rumor spread like fire, and Lina felt the sting of every word, as if the gossip was not just about Daniel, but a reflection of her own heart. The murmurs echoed through the church, reaching Lina like distant thunder. Her friends tried to calm her, offering comforting words, but their voices were drowned out by the imagination of the crowd. Every glance, every side comment, seemed to carry judgment and suspicion. She felt the weight of eyes upon her, each one silently questioning what she had done or who she truly loved. The innocence and joy that had begun the morning vanished, leaving behind a tension that pressed down on her chest with relentless force. Even family members weren't immune to the uncertainty. Opinions clashed quietly in corners, suggestions debated in hushed tones. The absence of answers gave life to every possible scenario, each one darker than the last. Lina listened, absorbing the murmurs, trying to discern truth from speculation. Each theory cut deeper than the last, sharpening the edge of her fear. She realized that not only was she grappling with Daniel's absence, but with the imagined motives and judgments of everyone around her. Her mind flickered back to the weeks before the wedding, to the subtle signs she had noticed. Daniel's distant glances, the late-night calls, and the mysterious name he had mentioned now seemed to carry weight she hadn't understood before. She wondered if the whispers of the guests could somehow reveal what she had missed, if in the chaos of speculation, the truth might peek through. But as each rumor grew louder, she felt further from clarity, trapped between fear and hope, desperate for an explanation. An old friend of Daniel approached her cautiously, his eyes reflecting both concern and hesitation. He leaned in, as if to whisper, but stopped, reading the tension in Lina's face. He carried something unspoken, a confession or warning that he had waited too long to deliver. Lina's heart thumped as she realized that this person held a piece of the puzzle she had been desperately trying to solve. Her breath caught in her throat, anticipation mixing with anxiety, as she wondered what secrets were about to surface. The tension in the church was palpable, each heartbeat echoing in Lina's ears. The soft rustle of dresses and the quiet shuffle of feet contrasted sharply with the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. Every eye seemed to be looking for answers, every whispered theory twisting the moment further. Lina gripped her bouquet tightly, feeling both fragile and resolute. She knew she couldn't stop the gossip, but she could prepare herself for whatever truth might finally emerge from the shadows. Guests began to speculate openly, some speaking louder now that the initial shock had settled. Names were thrown into the air, theories elaborated upon, each scenario more dramatic than the last. Lina could feel the weight of judgment pressing in from every angle. It wasn't just about Daniel anymore, it was about her, her choices, her life unraveling in real time. The emotional intensity in the room mirrored the storm inside her, each whisper sharpening the ache in her chest. Despite the chaos, Lina held on to a fragile hope. She refused to let the rumors define her, refusing to surrender to despair. The storm of whispers was loud, but somewhere within it, she felt the pulse of truth trying to surface. Her intuition told her that there was more than gossip, that hidden behind the words of speculation lay the real reason for Daniel's disappearance. It was only a matter of time before the pieces fell into place. Just as the tension reached its peak, the old friend finally stepped closer, ready to speak. His expression held a gravity that silenced the whispers around him, and Lina's curiosity flared. Something important was about to be revealed, something that could explain the mystery that had shadowed her entire morning. The anticipation coiled tight in her chest, preparing her for a truth she hadn't yet imagined but would soon have to face. The friend's voice trembled slightly as he began to reveal what he had long kept hidden. Lina listened intently, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and curiosity. Daniel had been carrying a secret from years before, a past entangled with danger and deceit that he never shared with anyone, not even her. It wasn't the man she thought she knew. This was a side of him shaped by fear, mistakes, and the weight of obligations he could not ignore. The revelation struck her like a cold wind, yet she couldn't look away. According to the friend, Daniel had once been caught in a web of family conflicts and financial traps that left him vulnerable and fearful. A relationship built on lies had tested his integrity and loyalty, forcing him to make choices that weighed heavily on his conscience. He had thought about Lina constantly during those years, fearing that any connection to the truth would destroy the life they were building together. His vanishing was not a betrayal of love but a desperate act to shield her from pain. Lina's mind reeled as she processed the story. Every subtle hint she had noticed over the past weeks now carried a different meaning: the distant glances, the tense conversations, the phone calls he concealed. They were not signs of waning love but of a man trying to navigate a world of secrets he never wanted to involve her in. The complexity of his past, previously invisible to her, now loomed large, reshaping her understanding of his character and his decisions. The friend paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Lina's eyes filled with tears, not from anger but from the intensity of emotions, fear, empathy, and the ache of love tested by circumstance. She realized that Daniel's disappearance, though agonizing, was an act of sacrifice, not abandonment. The story of his past painted him in shades of gray, a man torn between duty, fear, and the deep love he held for her. It was a truth she had never imagined, yet it explained everything. Questions raced through Lina's mind. Why hadn't he confided in her sooner? How had he endured such burdens silently? Each answer she imagined only deepened her empathy while amplifying the heartbreak of the day's events. She felt the fragility of human intentions, the delicate balance between protection and misunderstanding. Daniel's silence, once a source of suspicion, now felt like a shield he had used to protect her from a storm she wasn't prepared to face. The church seemed to fade around her as she absorbed the confession. Guests, whispers, and judgment became background noise to the emotional gravity of the moment. She felt connected to Daniel in ways she hadn't anticipated, understanding his motives despite the pain they caused. His absence, though still bewildering, was a testament to the complexity of love, a love that demanded sacrifice, even at the cost of her own joy and security. Yet even with the revelation, the full truth remained just out of reach. Lina sensed that there was one final piece, something left behind, a clue or message that would reveal the heart of Daniel's decisions. The anticipation of discovering it both terrified and intrigued her. She knew the answers were close, and the moment they arrived, everything would shift: her understanding of him, their love, and the day she had imagined since childhood. Her grip tightened on her bouquet as she prepared herself. The uncertainty of the past was no longer a mystery. It had a name, a context, a story. But the final revelation, the piece that would fully illuminate Daniel's choice, was still waiting. The tension coiled in her chest, a mixture of dread and anticipation, reminding her that the morning's chaos was far from over. Lina took a deep breath, steadying herself for the next moment. The sealed letter left in Daniel's jacket earlier that day began to feel less like a forgotten object and more like a key. Somewhere inside, the truth waited, the full, unvarnished story of why the man she loved had disappeared at the most important moment of their lives. The air in the church felt charged, as if every secret was about to surface, and Lina knew that what she would discover next could change everything forever. Lina carefully unfolded the sealed letter she had found in Daniel's jacket, her hands trembling as if they sensed the weight of the words inside. The paper felt heavier than it should, like it carried not just ink, but the gravity of a truth long hidden. She hesitated for a moment, heart pounding, knowing that reading it would change everything. The room seemed to grow quieter, the distant murmurs fading as her focus narrowed to the message in her hands. Every instinct told her to brace for revelation, yet curiosity and love propelled her forward. The letter revealed the depth of Daniel's fear and sacrifice. His family had concealed lies that would have shattered Lina's world if revealed. Money, betrayal, and secrets intertwined between their families, creating a dangerous web that he believed could ruin her reputation and future. Marrying her meant exposing her to humiliation and pain he was desperate to prevent. The realization struck Lina with a bittersweet clarity. His absence was not rejection but protection, a twisted act of love meant to shield her from consequences he alone understood. Each line of the letter made her chest tighten. Daniel had agonized over every choice, weighing love against duty, desire against consequence. He had vanished that morning not out of hatred or indifference, but because he feared that being present would hurt her more than leaving ever could. The logic was painful yet coherent, a testament to the complexity of his heart. Lina's grief mingled with empathy, tears flowing freely as she began to understand the impossible position he had been placed in. Memories of their shared moments returned vividly, the laughter, the quiet talks, the dreams they had whispered to each other. Now, each memory carried a new weight, reframed in light of his secret struggle. She saw him not just as the man who stood her up, but as someone wrestling with the impossibility of protecting love while preserving dignity. The duality of his action, absence as sacrifice, left her heart conflicted, aching with both sorrow and understanding. The letter described Daniel's fear of shame and exposure, the delicate balancing act he had performed in silence. It spoke of sleepless nights, endless contemplation, and a decision that had been agonizing yet necessary in his mind. He wanted to save her from the burden of his family's lies, even if it meant leaving her at the altar. Each revelation cut deeper, a mixture of heartbreak and clarity, as Lina realized the full weight of his love and the price he had paid for secrecy. Lina's tears blurred the words on the page, yet she read on, determined to grasp the entirety of his reasoning. Every paragraph revealed more layers, the conflicts he had endured, the decisions he had made in solitude, and the protection he had tried to offer her. She felt the enormity of his internal struggle, a silent battle that had been hidden behind his calm exterior. The man she thought she knew had lived a life shadowed by duty and fear, and now she saw his courage in a new light. A storm of emotions swirled within her, sadness, love, anger, and awe. She grieved the moment lost, the wedding she had envisioned, and the confrontation she would never have. Yet she also felt an unexpected gratitude for his intentions, painful as they were. His absence, once the source of humiliation and confusion, now carried a tragic nobility. Lina realized that love could take many forms, even ones that hurt, and that sometimes, true protection meant letting go. The weight of the dark secret settled into her heart, reshaping her understanding of the morning, the guests, and Daniel himself. She felt both crushed and enlightened, as though she had been handed a truth too heavy for a single day, yet too important to ignore. Every whisper, every look, and every heartbeat now aligned with this revelation. The chaos of the wedding, the tears, the panic, all made sense in the shadow of what Daniel had been trying to prevent. As Lina folded the letter and pressed it close, she realized a choice lay before her. She could succumb to heartbreak, allow the morning's humiliation to define her, or she could rise above, using the knowledge of his sacrifice to reclaim her own strength. Her gaze lifted toward the guests and the bright room beyond, a quiet determination forming. The story was far from over. The next step would define her not as a victim of secrets, but as someone who could face them with courage and clarity. Lina took a deep breath, letting the cool air of the church wash over her as she steadied herself. Tears still streaked her face, but they no longer carried only despair, they held determination and clarity. She realized that the heartbreak and chaos of the morning had not broken her, they had awakened a strength she didn't know she possessed. Each heartbeat reminded her that while love could hurt, it could also empower, and she chose to rise above the storm rather than succumb to it. She stood before the guests, her hands lightly gripping the bouquet, her gaze firm yet filled with vulnerability. The room felt charged, every whisper and glance heightening the tension, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she let the emotions of the morning shape her resolve, embracing both grief and insight. She knew that the story of her love, her pain, and Daniel's choices was now hers to tell. This moment was not about humiliation or confusion, it was about claiming her narrative and standing strong in the face of heartbreak. Lina reflected on every small moment of their relationship, every laugh and tear shared, now seen through the lens of the dark secret she had uncovered. She understood that love was never simple, that it could be entangled with fear, sacrifice, and human imperfection. Her grief transformed into wisdom, each memory a lesson about compassion, trust, and the courage it took to navigate life's complexities. The audience in the church seemed to sense the shift, watching as she embraced her new perspective with quiet dignity. Guests exchanged glances, some still puzzled by the events of the morning, others visibly moved by Lina's poise. She allowed herself a moment to feel the weight of the room's energy, acknowledging the pain, rumors, and uncertainty, but refusing to let it define her. Her tears became a testament not to defeat but to resilience. Every observer could see that her strength was forged through adversity, that the storm had not drowned her spirit but honed it into something formidable. The realization hit her fully: Daniel's choices, though painful, had left her with freedom and clarity. She no longer needed to dwell in confusion or regret. The dark secret, the absence, and the rumors, they had all been part of a story larger than she had imagined. Now, armed with understanding and self-respect, she could reclaim her life and her voice. Her gaze swept across the church, acknowledging the faces that had witnessed both her despair and her awakening, feeling a sense of empowerment in the shared experience. Her thoughts turned inward, contemplating how pain and love were intertwined, and how the challenges of life often revealed hidden reserves of strength. She realized that the storm had tested not only her patience and trust but her ability to act with courage in the face of uncertainty. Every tear, every whispered speculation, every agonizing moment of waiting had contributed to a transformation. She was no longer merely a bride abandoned, she was a woman capable of navigating life's complexities with clarity and resilience. Lina's stance shifted from fragile to commanding, subtle yet undeniable. She understood that this morning, though broken by secrets and absence, had gifted her insight into her own character. Her heart ached for what could have been, but it also swelled with pride for what she had discovered about herself. In embracing both sorrow and wisdom, she became a symbol of strength, proving that adversity could not only test but refine one's spirit. The guests felt it too, a quiet reverence settling over the church as they realized Lina's transformation. No longer just a bride in tears, she had become a figure of resilience, a reminder that love's challenges could teach more than comfort ever could. The morning's chaos, Daniel's secret, and the whispers of the crowd all merged into a tapestry of growth and realization. Lina's strength in the storm became a beacon, showing that even in heartbreak, clarity and empowerment could emerge. Yet even with her newfound strength, Lina sensed that the story was not entirely complete. There was still one final revelation, one last piece of truth hidden in Daniel's letter that had yet to fully reveal itself. The anticipation of this ultimate disclosure created a pulse of tension, a promise that the morning's journey of pain, understanding, and empowerment was about to reach its emotional climax. Lina's gaze, steady and curious, prepared for what would come next. Lina unfolded the last page of Daniel's letter with trembling hands, knowing that the final lines could change everything she thought she understood. Her heart pounded as she read, each word carefully chosen, heavy with emotion and truth. The revelation hit her like a wave: Daniel had never planned to return. The moment he vanished, he had made a decision to leave the country, carrying the weight of his family's lies and secrets, leaving her free but forever changed. The room around her blurred as she absorbed the full truth. Every whispered rumor, every glance of speculation, every anxious thought now aligned with what the letter revealed. Daniel's absence was not a betrayal of love but a selfless act, meant to shield her from humiliation and the consequences of hidden family betrayals. Lina's mind raced to piece together the final fragments of the puzzle, each realization sharpening the clarity of the morning's chaos. Tears streamed down her face, mingling grief with understanding. She thought of all the dreams she had held for this day, now altered forever by circumstances beyond her control. Yet in that heartbreak, she felt a profound sense of empathy and forgiveness. Daniel's actions, though painful, were born of love and fear, a complex combination that no one else could fully comprehend. Lina's heart expanded to hold both sorrow and compassion, a duality that left her emotionally raw but wiser. The guests watched silently, sensing that this was a moment of significance. Lina's stance, once trembling with despair, now carried a quiet power. She understood that the story of her wedding day, though fractured by secrets and absence, had revealed truths that were larger than herself and Daniel. Every individual in the room felt the weight of her realization, the depth of the hidden narrative, and the courage it took to stand with clarity amid confusion. She thought back to the weeks leading up to the wedding, the late-night calls, the tension, the subtle hints of unease. Every detail now carried new meaning, each a piece of a larger story she could finally understand. Daniel's departure was not a rejection but a shield, a choice to protect her from harm he couldn't prevent if he remained. The complexity of his love left her awed, even as it left her heart aching. With the letter in her hand, Lina felt a mixture of liberation and sorrow. She was free to continue her life without the burden of Daniel's family secrets, yet the absence of the man she loved left a hollow ache. The dark secret had been unveiled, transforming the narrative from one of humiliation to one of understanding and emotional depth. She realized that life often demanded sacrifices that were invisible to the outside world, acts of love that went unseen yet shaped destinies profoundly. Her tears began to slow, replaced by a quiet determination. She understood that this morning had changed her, revealing not just the hidden truths of others but the strength and resilience within herself. Lina recognized that love could be complicated, painful, and imperfect, yet still carry lessons of courage, empathy, and self-discovery. The weight of the final revelation settled into her heart, a blend of grief and empowerment that would guide her future. Looking out over the guests, Lina sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The murmurs and whispers were replaced by an unspoken respect, an acknowledgement of the journey she had endured in just a single morning. She had become both the witness and the survivor of a love story shaped by secrecy, sacrifice, and unforeseen truth. The weight of Daniel's decision and the dark secrets it concealed had transformed her understanding of love, family, and the courage it takes to face life's most difficult moments. In that moment, Lina realized that she was no longer just the bride abandoned at the altar. She was the embodiment of resilience, empathy, and wisdom, carrying forward the lessons of heartbreak and revelation. Daniel's absence and the truths he had left behind would forever be a part of her story, but they would not define her. Instead, they had strengthened her, teaching her the value of understanding, the power of self-compassion, and the courage to rise above even the darkest secrets. In the end, Lina's story is not about losing love, but about finding strength. Her tears carried pain, but also power, the power to stand again, even after betrayal. Would you forgive someone who disappeared before the vows? Or would you choose to walk away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to uncover the secrets behind every wedding.